I just finished my first draft. Congratulations. What the heck do I do next? It feels like there's a million different things to think about. Well, the last question was only thinking about 30. So first, tone it down a little bit.
Right.
No, but
Bring that down a notch. Yeah.
I completely get this because I think back to when I finished my first book. Even before, I think about when I was writing my first book, and there were already a million things to think about. And
Right.
we often joke in W articles that writing the first draft, though it's the longest part, it's the easiest part, and it's definitely the most fun part. Right after that comes the actual work, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But I guess instead of just reiterating things that we've already said, Hank, what is your personal process? Like, if you finished a draft today, what are you doing tomorrow, and what are you doing next week and next month?
Tomorrow, ideally, I'm doing something else, because, if you take Stephen King's advice from On Writing, and we always seem to pick on Stephen King for some reason.
Because
But,
he doesn't come to our chats.
well, yeah, that's what it is. He just won't show up. He says to take that draft, stick it in a desk drawer for like 6 weeks or something, like, which I think is amazing advice if you can do it.
Yeah.
And his whole point is get your mind off of it. Quit obsessing over the book that you've been obsessing over every day for however long it took you to write that first draft. Get it off your mind. Go do something else. Find something else to care about, so that when you do come back to it, you come back to it with fresh eyes and with a fresh perspective, and you're not so close to it that you can see some of those areas that have been a little too precious to you
Mm.
to really turn a critical eye to. Whether that's 6 weeks, if you can do that, whether it's 1 week, whatever it is, do something different. Find something else to care about, and then come back to it. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read through it and try to look at it uh, from a reader's perspective. And I will take notes. I keep a little notebook, and I, kind of jot down who the characters are, and why I should care about them, and if I do care about them, has the writer done a good enough job of bringing this character into my life and making me care about what's going to happen to them, and I just kind of jot notes down. Does this scene, is it consistent with what the writer has told me about them from the beginning? And I kind of follow that through to the end, and just kind of jot notes just for myself of whether I think this is working or not. And then at the end of that, I look through my notes, and if I've done a good job in the beginning, which rarely happens that there are just no issues because I'm not that good a
Perfect right
writer.
away.
Yeah, yeah. Then I just start, adjusting from there, and looking at what, and I kind of make those structural changes. And I go through and kind of tie those things together, and then go over my list, and did I accomplish what I, thought of? And so I kind of make a couple of passes like that, which would be kind of like a second, third draft. And then I'll get some trusted readers, that can I get you to read this for me? Ignore spelling, punctuation, all that. Just, does the story work from beginning to end? Have I done a good enough job of what I set out to do? And then once I've satisfied myself, and then what my outside readers who have never seen these characters and this plot, if they're satisfied with how the progression goes, then I start working through the tidy up, the can I recraft this paragraph to make it sound a little better? Can I amp up some excitement here? Can I bring a little more um, emotion? It's more resonance to this scene, to this paragraph, that sort of thing. And then I go, start doing my grammar and spelling cleanups, and that sort of thing. And then, go to a copy editor to really refine my edits. So that's kind of the process that I take.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I like that. Do you, when you use beta readers or outside
Mhm.
readers, do you ever send them any kind of questions or anything to look out for, or is it just have
I
at it?
I I don't. I know people that do that, but to me, I kind of feel like if I'm doing that, I'm leading the reader a little bit. I'm making
Hmm.
them hyper aware, of this thing that I'm trying to accomplish, and I'm kinda giving it away. So,
Yeah.
sometimes I will question them afterwards,
Yeah.
um, but I may do that in the future. I just never have because I really want that raw, honest
Yeah.
feedback, um, of, if I didn't accomplish what I set out to do, I'll hear that from them
Hmm.
without me having to ask them ahead of time,
Hmm.
but to me, I kinda feel like if I ask ahead of time, I'm giving them a heads up,
Yeah,
and I
you're
may
priming
not get
them in a
the
way you don't want to.
exact response
Yeah.
that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. For my own process, I feel like it's pretty similar, but I do a lot of plotting. Even though I'm consciously trying to do a little less plotting, I still know I skew heavily towards
Mm,
that side of our spectrum. And so when I am done, there are less plot holes than you might find in someone who's pants a book or has pantsed it more.
yeah,
Um, which is nice for me, right? I put in the work up front and then I have less to do on this side of it. That doesn't
right.
mean plot holes don't exist, but there'll be less plot holes and just more like continuity errors or things popping up that weren't there before or that sort of stuff. And those things are easy to fix. I had an author tell me once who he's written a lot more than I have. And he said, when something like that pops up, it's usually like a 6 word fix somewhere earlier in the book.
Mm,
And so that's what I tend to do. Like I'll read through it for the big stuff and I'll make notes of any of that small stuff, and then I'll read through it again for that smaller stuff specifically, and then I'll go through and make those kind of spot fixes wherever they're needed. And then from there, I'll tighten up some of the prose. I'll whip out the old thesaurus and make things a little fancier because I write dark fantasy, right? So it's more verbose because it's fantasy, but it's also grosser because it's dark. So so I get to have fun, and that kind of verbiage doesn't actually come naturally to me. Like the most intense in both aspects, like the worst and the most flowery, doesn't come naturally as I'm writing, especially during a word sprint, right? So I'll go and I'll replace those the weaker adverbs and the weaker descriptions with something a little more genre appropriate, and then off to the beta readers. I don't think I personally have the patience for more than 3 rounds of revisions before it goes to
yeah,
beta readers. Anything
yeah,
more than that, and I think I'm just kind of bashing my head against the wall, trying to fix something that's not there,
yeah,
um, or fix something that I'm incapable of fixing. Another thing I think people need to realize is that like there's different magnitudes of writers. Like I am not an author as skilled as some New York Times multi-million bestseller, right? They or maybe I am as skilled, but I don't have the same team behind me as one of the big 5 publishing houses to make this sound as perfect as it can sound. And like during my first book, I wasn't okay with that. Since then, I'm like, this is just how I write. This is my voice, and the people who
right,
read my books like this, right? I don't want to imitate somebody else. So I'm more and more okay with my process as we go. Then it goes beta readers back to me. I do revisions, and then depending on the beta reader, I either take them out for a coffee or buy them a 6 pack of beer, and we chat about the process and what they liked, what they didn't like. That's where I'll ask them more questions than priming them beforehand, and and then I incorporate their stuff. I'll give it one last read through, checking for spelling, grammar, any words that didn't get improved the first time around. But like even as an editor myself, I'm not copy editing my own work. So then it goes to a copy editor. And if I
right,
was using a line editor, it would go before that. It would go beta reader, line editor. Mm, it can go either way. This is where it gets tricky. You can do line editor, then beta reader. Then your beta readers are seeing like the best polished prose that you can get. Or it can go beta reader, incorporate their bigger feedback if it affects your story, and then line editing so you can brush up that feedback, and then off to the copy editor. So there's a little
Yeah.
bit of flexibility in there. But then the copy editor, I get it back, make those changes, format, KDP, off to the readers.